So what is a man of God? That's what we're talking about today. Welcome to Theo Live, episode 36. If you are new to the channel, hello to you. I've seen a lot of growth over the last 2 weeks, and so I just want to say hello to all the new people. You might be wondering, what is this show about? Well, every Monday I do a stream, and I'm still debating. If you've been paying attention to some of the Ask Me Anythings or over on the community tab here on my channel, which I want to get more, I'm going to use it more, okay? I'm going to. It's worth it. But I've been debating, should I rename this Monday stream that I have going on? And so far, all of you guys are like, no. Just want you to know, it's still going to be the same stuff. I'm just debating whether I call it Theo Live. But for now, it is Theo Live. And if you are here, here's what I want from you before we get going. Like this video. You might be wondering, Dean, you haven't said anything yet. Why should I like this video? Well, the reason why is because I want you to. Also, you can take it back later. If I say something and you're just like, never listen to this guy again, you can just unclick the button. You can just go up and just unclick it. If you go right now, you can see the cool animation that they added a couple months ago. Maybe you haven't hit the like button. You got to do that more often when you're watching stuff. Not just on my channel, just everyone's channels. Liking matters. That's what I found out. So if you are new, just do that as a present. See, I see it happen. It makes me happy. Did you see the smile that you just gave me? It's like a Make-A-Wish kind of thing for YouTubers. What am I talking about today? Today I'm talking about Todd Friel and a video that he did. I don't know how recent this was, okay? I was folding laundry right over there. And yesterday, when I fold laundry, it's going to be hours, okay? I hate folding laundry. It's one of the few things that I actually hate about housework chores. But I really hate it, but it needed to be done. And so I flip on YouTube and I'm just like, hey, YouTube, show me something cool, Just show me something. I want to feel something. And in the midst of all these van life videos, because I'm kind of addicted, but you can't really do van life when you have 3 kids. So someday maybe. But in the midst of all those van life videos, here comes a Todd Friel Wretched TV episode. I don't know if it's an episode, but it caught my attention because on the thumbnail, it was Carl Lentz, and it said something to the effect of, "Is your pastor a man of God?" And I was like, I hear that so often, that phrase. Whenever I hear that phrase, I just the alarm bells start going off in my head, and I start going wait, what are we talking about? Where's this going? I grew up in Fundy world. And so I know what that means. Now, if you're wondering, Dean, what's the big deal talking about the man of God? Shouldn't we all, if you're a man, you should strive to be a man of God. And if you're a woman, you should strive to be a woman of God. So what's the big deal? Well, where I'm from, Fundytown, where I was on the outskirts of Fundytown, I was, on the wrong side of the train tracks, I guess, in Fundytown. And when you heard phrases like that of man of God, usually it meant a few specific things of someone who looked the part, was always wearing a suit, was always, here's something, it was different times, but Martin Lloyd-Jones, one of my favorites, one of the funny things about him is that he wore a suit everywhere he went. And there's video. If you watch Logic on Fire, that documentary that they did, I think it was Media Gratier that did the documentary. They showed a clip of him at the beach with his family, and everyone's wearing their bathing suits and stuff. And there's Martin Lloyd-Jones just sitting there in a full-on suit. But that was a different time. But I feel like a lot of people, when they're talking about the man of God today, that's what they think of. It's someone who's always wearing a suit, who would never say anything remotely crass, Like they wouldn't say dang it, which I say on my channel all the time, like, or crap, like those words. They would never have such filth come out of their mouths. They would never attend something like a movie theater. Never. Why would you go into Satan's house like that? Like that's where my mind goes when I hear man of God. Now, some of you might be from a different perspective and you're like, I don't have that affiliation. But some of you also might come from a different place. Like if you're in the charismatic world, maybe you grew up in Pentecostalism, or maybe you're still there, which is fine. Welcome on my channel. Like not looking down. But people over in that camp would hear man of God, and they would think of, these pastors and preachers who are so aloof, that you could never question them. Why would you touch God's anointed? Touch not God's anointed. That's not what that means, but they jump with that and they start talking about the man of God as if, he's God's special person, and you need to treat him like he's God's special person. So it doesn't just mean like listening to his sermons and trying to stay awake during his sermons, but like also that you just treat him with respect. If you see a man of God out there, you gotta, pay for his meal, open up his door for him. He has a burden and you need to help him carry it. Like there's that kind of stuff with the man of God. So when I heard Todd Friel start talking about the man of God, I was like, oh boy. And I think that he played right into a lot of these stereotypes that we hear and maybe some of us have experienced with this idea of a man of God. So we're going to look at some clips today from Todd Friel. We're going to look at an article, which isn't really an article. I have some thoughts about that too. If you're interested in John MacArthur stuff, we'll talk about John MacArthur right off the bat here in a minute. But first, before we get into the content today, and I do have a time crunch, so I'm just saying, like I'm going to try to end this stream within an hour. Usually my shows go from like an hour 10 to an hour and a half usually, but we got to be really precise today because I got stuff going on. But I want to make sure that I'm hanging out with you guys because I really enjoy hanging out with you guys. And if you are watching, which by the way, I see that there's a lot of people watching who haven't hit the like button. So I'm going to hit that animation again. And if you're wondering like, Dean, you got to stop talking about it all the time. Make me hit the like button. But also hop into the chat. Let's hang out. Like, I love to interact with you guys. It's one of the funnest things about YouTube. So as we're dealing with like topics and different things, I want to know what you think, I don't want to just hear my own thoughts. That's not very fun for me. Like, I mean, it's fun to talk and be able to, get my thoughts out there. And that's cool. Like, that's a unique thing about the internet, that all of us have a platform if we want it, that we can just go and talk and maybe someone out there will listen. That's cool. But what's even better is the ability to live stream to where you and I can actually have a discussion. And I think that's really cool. Comments are great too. So if you're watching the rewatch, go into the comments. If you disagree with me, we could have a discussion about it, but be nice. That's always my rule. We follow the 11th commandment here. Be nice. But yeah, so hop into the chat. If you're new and you're like, I don't want to, it's scary in there. It's not that scary. People are pretty nice. Celi's doing it. She's saying, morning, beautiful weirdos, which again is a compliment from what I'm told from her. Michael S., wow, Todd Friel really likes to walk and spin around. Oh, so, okay, so you probably went and watched the video. Yeah, he does. Actually, I remember 2008, I was a sophomore in Bible college, and I got a subscription to Wretched TV because I was like slowly coming into like that young, restless reform stuff. I was listening to Driscoll and other people like that, but these like more conservative, Calvinistic people, I started watching it, and I had this subscription for like 2 months, and then I got rid of it mostly because Todd Friel, like one, I changed the audio a little bit today because I'm a little concerned about like copyright stuff. Like it is fair use because I'm just like referencing things and I'm talking over it and I've changed things. But people are weird. So I like changed the audio a little bit, and I think I made it actually a little bit easier to listen to him. But he just talks like this in this sing-songy kind of way, and it's just I can't listen to that for that long. But everyone talks different. I'm just teasing a little bit. But then also he's like walking around the set, like what Michael's saying here. And it just always looks like he's trying to escape. Like if you watched the Super Bowl halftime show, was it last year? No, the year before. And I know some people have thoughts about that. I watch him. I love him. It's pretty fun. But Bruno Mars in like that mirror house, and he's like trying to find his way out. That's kind of what I feel like about Todd Friel trying to find a way off his set. It's just like wandering around being like, is this the exit? How do I get out of here? And then pointing at TVs. But hey, it's fun. Dwayne Green saying, hey man, how's it going? We'll always be friends. Oh, that's so nice. Lots of growth. Good. The Lord is with you. Glad to be back. Awesome. I hate washing dishes, folding laundry. Let's turn this stream into just talking about how awful house chores are. That'd be great, because they are. No, I don't think anyone really enjoys it. Maybe if you can like listen to a podcast or something, or maybe right now you have me sitting on like your phone over there while you're doing the dishes. Maybe that's the best way you could, take advantage of your time now. Let's see. I got some other stuff about that. Oh, van life. Yes. I'm very interested in van life. I'm currently in a minivan, but want a bigger van when I can afford one. Yeah. Minivan life and van life are very different. And I wish I could do van life, but right now it's just minivan life. Lonnie, sometimes I find doing dishes to be therapeutic. Okay. So there's one person. Gives me time to think. All right. There's one person who likes it. And John saying, hey, like away. Absolutely. Good to see you, John. Saw you dropped the video today. People should go check it out after the stream. Let's see. He doesn't talk that way when street evangelizing. Okay. Well, I kind of figured, because like, all right, I've been told I have a preacher voice. I think every pastor does, or any public speaker kind of has like their speaking voice. So I've been told like, you sound a lot different when you're behind a pulpit. And so I get that. And also he's like a radio guy. So it's like shock jock kind of stuff. But I could see where he would be a little bit different. I tried watching it, but yes, the walk and the talk cadence were throwing me off. Also, the set raises more questions than it answers. All right. See, that's the way you do it. Gave you a like from the start. I appreciate that. All right. Excited I got to catch this live. I like listening while I document for work. Appreciate it. Hey, Orlando. I'm washing dishes while listening. LOL. Nice. Awesome. And yeah. All right. So here we go. So I'm going to show you a clip first. That's where I want to start, because I got feelings. About how we treat pastors and how we make it almost impossible for them to be, at least in some circles, we make it almost impossible for them to just like be themselves, just to like let loose and just be who they are, who God made them, without them trying to put on a front. There's like even talking about like the speaking voice. That's one thing. If you change your speaker voice to like, all right, now I'm on a platform, so I need to be able to really project my voice. Like that's different. But if you're going to act one way in front of your church people, and I know this because like I've been here, like I've been at churches where I was a pastor and I knew what people expected from me. And maybe some of them didn't. Maybe they didn't expect me to be like perfect, but I felt like that pressure from people who definitely did. And so I acted a little bit differently than I would if I was just hanging out with you. So there's something to it. And like a lot of pastors have to struggle with that to find out, how honest they can be, transparent they can be. But when we have philosophies like what we're going to be talking about today about the man of God, we make it very difficult for pastors to be themselves. And when that happens, there's some effects, and we'll talk about the effects and how sometimes that leads to some of these awful stories that we talk about here on the channel. So I want us to be empathetic today. And I know sympathy is sin. We talked about that on a show. It's not. So let's be empathetic toward our pastors, toward our spiritual leaders, and think about them as real people, okay? And ask whether what we're talking about today, whether that could fit into the idea of being a real person or whether that could get in the way. It's going to get in the way. We'll talk about it. All right, so let's go over here and let's hear from the man himself, Todd Friel, and talk about just like the beginning. Like this is part of his opener. I just want to show a few clips. As you can see, they're very short, except for one is a little bit longer. And prepare yourself because he kind of sounds like a squirrel.
Sadly, today, evangelical Christianity, the pragmatic, trendy beast that we are, encourages a fellow who desires to be in ministry to be hip, to be relevant, to be downright worldly. Sir, if you are a minister, you are to be a man of God. Somebody who is different than everybody else. I'm not talking about dorky. I'm not talking about, when you look at the geek and the way he's acting and dressing. No, we want to be as up to speed as we can be, but that doesn't mean we should be worldly.
Okay, so this is part of his introduction in this episode, where he wants to talk about the idea of being a man of God versus this idea of what he calls worldly. Now, I want to be clear, he never gives any actual definitions, okay? He doesn't really define, he gives a general idea of a man of God from the Old Testament, but doesn't really say what a man of God is in the New Testament. And there's a big difference, guys, because in the Old Testament, we get a bunch of references of the man of God. The man of God is, a prophet, basically, someone who speaks for God. So they are literally God's man, that God is having one person go and represent him to the nation of Israel and to other specific individuals. So that's different. We don't have prophets. I don't want to get into the weeds about cessationism. We will talk about that eventually on an episode. But I don't believe that there are prophets today in that specific way, like we see in the Old Testament. So that office is done. All right. So when we talk about things in the New Testament, we need to be very careful. If you are going to be a cessationist, then it doesn't make sense to bring all the things that we see in the Old Testament, all that baggage, and bring it to the New Testament and say that's what it means in these only. Let me be very clear about this. 2 verses, okay? Tons of references in the Old Testament. I think it's upwards of like 40 or something like that. In always in reference to a prophet. I looked him up, prophet. So 40 verses 2. Now, why? We have to ask that question. Why is there such a big difference between these 2 different testaments? Like, why is it man of God all the time in the Old Testament and only 2 times in the New Testament? Well, could they be talking about different things? Yeah. So, like the people who want to talk about a man of God, and in their mind, they're thinking of like Samuel, they're thinking about Moses. that is not the same idea as when we're talking about pastors, because we just have these two specific verses. Now, the thing that he does, he actually gets this actually from the Cripplegate. Now, it's kind of weird because I'm not all that familiar with the Cripplegate. I've met some of the writers, not huge fan. But they basically do a lot of like the John MacArthur side of evangelicalism. Like they do those kinds of blogs. But he's referencing basically throughout the entire video this Cripplegate article. And it has 4 points, and he takes all 4 points in his video, and he's basically just making commentary on the article. Now, the article that he's referencing is interesting because this is 4 ways to recognize a man of God. And it's really talking about John MacArthur and something that he said. This was back in 2021, I think. Let me go back up. 2020. All right. So this is right at the beginning of the pandemic and all of that. And they weren't able to have, a graduation the way they wanted to, all that stuff. And so John MacArthur charged the graduates of the Master's Seminary with this sermon. And as I was looking at it and as I was listening, I was sitting over on that couch over there. You can't see it, and you don't want to see it because it's dirty over there. But I was folding laundry, and I'm like, I know this. I've heard this before. Where have I heard this before? Well, I remember, like, I don't have like a photographic memory. I don't want to misrepresent myself, but I do have a decent memory for things that I read. Not necessarily things I hear or see, but things I read. I have a pretty good memory for that. And I was like, where have I heard this before? I heard it right here in John MacArthur's commentary. Now, if you look at this, like the Cripplegate thing, he has 4 points, and it's known. He's known by what he flees from. The man of God is known by what he follows after. He's known by what he fights for, and by what he's faithful to. Well, that is all taken directly out of John MacArthur's commentary from 1995. So, like, he's not plagiarizing because he's just using the same stuff, but he does this a lot where he'll give a sermon, and it's just like, if you go and you're like, that kind of sounds familiar, you just, he preached that exact sermon, or, he wrote it in a commentary. He literally gave all of his points in the commentary. And like this, like before all the stuff from this last couple years, like that's something that I noticed even with his books, where like the last, I think I put them all away. Did that on purpose, actually. Yeah, like even that book on Revelation, that was fairly recent. Like that was like 3 or 4 years ago. Like it's just all sermons that he preached back in the day. It's just stuff like that. But it's not anything like, drama, but it's just like, okay. So what we're actually referencing is Todd Friel making a video about a blog post about a commentary, a blog post about a sermon about a commentary. Like, so it's diluted. I'll just say that. But it wasn't rich to begin with. Like the commentary is actually like pretty much exactly what's in Cripplegate. But I just found that really interesting. Just like, I think I've heard that before. And yeah, I definitely have when I was preaching through that passage and back in the day and referencing that commentary. Let's see. What do you guys, I see some questions even coming in. Oh, hey, okay. You've been checking out the Marking Up the Word series on Romans. All right, cool. Yeah, it's not that great. Like, at least I was trying to be helpful toward people in my immediate circles of giving them something during the pandemic of a Bible study. And then I just really enjoy, obviously, going through the Word of God. So I'm bringing some of that stuff back in Bible Rhythms on Fridays. So be on the lookout. We are going to do it, okay? Last week, things came up. This week, my son could win the biggest award. He won an award last week, and I got to go and celebrate his award. But he could win the biggest award. I ain't coming, bro. I got YouTube to do. No, just kidding. But yeah. So we're going to do it. Bible Rhythms. So if you like the marking up the word stuff, check out Bible Rhythms this Friday. Hey, Dean, do you think there's such a thing as New Calvinism and historical Calvinism? Yeah, I definitely do. That would be something like, I don't want to get too off topic here, but that's a good question. Ask me again during an AMA. I want to do more of those. I had a lot of fun last Friday. If you haven't checked out that video, go check out that video. Joe Thorne was there. Guys, he's coming on the show, by the way. I don't want to be too weird, but someone has his phone number now. We had a good conversation. I was helping him out with some live streaming stuff because he wants to maybe get into some more of that. He's at least learning some stuff about it. And he's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. I'm having Joe freaking Thorne. Number one dude of getting on the show right off the bat. Pretty happy about that. But go back and check out that AMA. But ask me that again, Word and Water, in an AMA, and I can go into detail about it. AP, I agree. As a PK, a pastor's kid, saw this firsthand. So this idea of the man of God and how that makes it very hard for them to be real people, or they feel like they have to change who they are in order to fit in properly within a church. It's not good. Empathy, I feel, is central to the gospel. I feel it's definitely an effect of the gospel that we should be empathetic. Right? It's just a little funny. It's a little funny. Let's see. Lonnie, I'm a PK and I saw my dad have difficulty having friendships because of the exceptions that he expressed, the loneliness that he felt. Yeah. I think a lot of pastors are there. And when we get into this, we'll see how that has an effect. Let's see. All right. Hey, Jeffrey's here. Hey, Jeffrey. How's it going, man? No worries about being late. You can just catch up later. Oh, and I like Bible Rhythms. I try and learn from what you teach. Awesome. That's so encouraging. I appreciate it. All right. Let's keep on going. So, let's look at this article here. So, let's go up here. So the man of God, which again, they're just taking it as a lot of the same principles of the Old Testament and the prophet, and just taking a lot of those characteristics and adding it to the New Testament into, oh yeah, we should probably look at that. These two different verses that we see, now the first one is in 1 Timothy 3:17, which if you watch Bible Rhythms, actually, from now, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we dealt with that passage and we talked about what it meant to be the man of God. And what that means is just person. It's God's person. And everyone is on the same page. Let me be clear. Everybody is pretty much on the same page. That man of God there in 1 Timothy 3:17 is in reference to just someone who belongs to God. All right, so it's not just a dude, it's not just a lady, it's everybody, and it's not just a pastor, and that's about all Scripture being breathed out by God, that's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, so that the man of God may be perfect, complete, I think is a better way to put that, and that he's able to do, prepared to do every good work. So that's just a Christian. That's everybody. That's me, that man of God, so that the word is sufficient for us to know how to live our lives. and that it's profitable for all those different things so that we can do good works and glorify our Heavenly Father. So that's me, that's you. All of us fit into that category of man of God. So why do I bring that up so like heavily here? Is because just a couple pages over is 1 Timothy 6, verse 11. Which is actually where this is all coming from. It's like literally all of this about the man of God and what he needs to do, and real focus on action, things that need to be done. Legalism, we'll get into it. But all of that comes from that 1 Timothy chapter 6 passage. So let's take a look at it. But you, man of God, flee from these things, and these things being in reference to all the things probably from verse 8 on. But you, man of God, flee from these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of eternal life, to which you were called and about which you have made a good confession in the presence of many witnesses. And it goes on. All right, so we're talking about that. So in 1 Timothy 3:17, everyone's on the same page. That man of God is me, it's you. Doesn't matter if you're a pastor or not, it's a Christian. And then for some reason, we go just a couple pages over, and everybody, not everybody, but people in these circles, they just go, oh no, now we're talking about the Old Testament idea. Like the other one, that was like in the same context and to the same people and was the same writer and the same audience. That one's Christians, because we should all do that. But here it's about Timothy being a pastor. How does that make sense? It doesn't. If you're going to interpret something one place, one specific way, and you don't change the context, like as far as like the writer, the audience, what's happening around them, then you can't just go like a little bit later. Because again, Paul didn't write in chapters, guys. This is one continuous letter that he's writing to Timothy. You don't get to just go from that place to now I'm going to interpret this completely different. Unless there's something that says that it should. And we don't have anything in the text that would make us think like this is specifically about pastors. There's nothing there. Actually, it's like if you look at this, it's just like, oh, these are things that we should all do. We should all do these things, you know? Like we should flee from these things. We should not be involved in some of the things that are here. And then we should, pursue godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. That makes sense. So my point is that they're going off of a false presupposition of man of God here being in reference to like some kind of title. Like there's a reason. I can't zoom in. There's a reason in verse 11 why you don't see man of God capitalized. It's not a title. It's just Timothy. It's just you. It's just me. So this is for us. And it's not specifically about an elder in a local church. But that didn't stop them from being like, well, we need to do some things. Now, should pastors fit into that category? Absolutely. Like I'm just saying it's not like some secondary thing, like of application for us. It's application for everybody. And then like pastors would be in that everybody. All right. So the man of God is known by what he flees from. Paul repeatedly reminded Timothy to run from pointless arguments and disputes. And so here he's just like saying like, okay, all these different things is what you need to do. Like, and just kind of goes from one thing to like way over there. And where it was referenced to like everybody doing this thing, he's like, pastors need to do this. And even this thing about TV. One might imagine today, Paul telling Timothy to turn off the TV, run from the news, flee politics. Yeah. These people don't want to do that one. They flee politics and abandon social media. Those things take time and suck energy from the person who should be known as a man of God, which All right. Let me stop there. And a lot of this, like actually, like the video that I wanted to be doing today, I had a title, I have notes of how to spot a fundamentalist. I think that would be kind of a fun way to talk about things. And then I saw this and I was like, I need to talk about this because this get me worked up. And it's about fundamentalism, basically, because it's all about this reputation. Like we're in this passage of 1 Timothy chapter 6. If you look at that passage, where is reputation in that? Like this is constantly something that John MacArthur, out of this Cripplegate thing, out of his commentary, and then Todd Friel talking about it after, it's something that he's so focused on, reputation, that he should be known for this. Well, that's nowhere in the passage that they're known for it. It's just that they do it. You know, it's just that they're actually living that stuff out. What is up? Like this thing about reputation amongst pastors of you got to be known for this. How about you just do it and let the chips fall where they may? Like when you're so focused on reputation, that's when you start like changing your behavior to fit around people who are around you so that you can look like that's what you do. You know, it's a thing like the classic joke of like doing like a push-up and you're like on push-up number 4. And then like, you know, for me, my wife would walk by and I'm like 46, you know, like, no, you don't change it. You just keep on going. Like if you want a reputation, like, I mean, in a way, yes, we want that reputation to be like people of God, know that we love Jesus, which by the way, you're not going to find Jesus in here and you're not going to find Jesus in what Todd Friel says. Very interesting about motivations. And this is something that I'll talk about when eventually I talk about how to spot a fundamentalist, because it's all about actions and nothing about motivations. Like, please God. Shouldn't that be our motivation? No. What are you known for? You need to be known for these things. And so turn off the TV. No TV for you. You don't get to know that stuff. You don't get to be around that stuff. Here's what he has to say.
This was a title that was distinct, and it was be distinguished. The fellow who actually had the office of man of God, being a prophet, a mouthpiece for God, he was to be esteemed. Why? Because he was different.
Yeah, so that's just him talking about difference, that you need to be different. Like this weird version of holiness for pastors. But
would I make this a law? No. But in essence, that is what Paul told Timothy. You might be tempted. It's so fun to linger around the table talking about stuff. And that's what it is. Stuff. Run! Get on it, man. Flee from a wasting of time to being profitable, to being productive, to using your time for more important things.
Okay, so that's where we're at with this, all right? Like, when you're so focused on reputation that you need to be known as a man of God who flees from these things, you can't squander anything because you're a man of God, because you need to be about God's business. And so you don't get to, get rid of your TV, get off social media. All these other things are so much more important. We're still people. Like, pastors are people. And, your pastor might watch Stranger Things. He might be really excited about Stranger Things and how it came out, and he might have binge watched it. Does that make him a terrible pastor? Does that mean that he's not a man of God? Because he spent, I don't know, how long are the episodes? Like 10 hours over a weekend watching Stranger Things? Like what? And should that change your view of him and how he cares about you and what he does in the church? Because he wasted his time doing something that he enjoyed? What would you say if that was you? I mean, we all have responsibilities to exercise spiritual disciplines, to be praying, to be talking with God, to be constantly in prayer, to be studying the word for ourselves, to be like, and, you know, if we're being real about that passage in 1 Timothy 6, we're talking about all of us. We all should be doing these things. So if that's true, and we're supposed to be doing all these things, what if someone came around and like, did you watch Jeopardy last night? I mean, we could get into the weeds about all this kind of stuff. But that's what happens when you start making just arbitrary rules. You know, he says like, I wouldn't make a law about this, but, and then he makes a law about it. Like, yeah, he doesn't have like some like stamp that he puts on and says, now it is a law, but he's being legalistic about it and saying, all right, well, if men of God are supposed to be about God's things, then that must mean that they should always be about God's things and not waste their time with frivolous things. Now, in reference to that, he's talking about like the genealogy stuff, you know, that Timothy's supposed to be like, hey, don't quarrel about genealogies. It's not just like, hey, like TV. Like genealogies with that was a theological argument, and it was a waste of time. And Paul was telling Timothy, don't waste your time with dumb theological arguments. Like, just keep moving, man. Like, that's what he's trying to get at. Not, you can't watch Stranger Things, you know? Like, you need to be different. You need to be so different from your congregation. And that's what makes a lot of pastors feel isolated, is when they can't even like something. Now, I'll go to the wide shot and tell you a story. And if like, here's the thing. I know a lot of people from my past watch my stuff. If Joe Thorne is watching my stuff, I bet a lot of people from my past are watching my stuff too. But so if you're watching this, like I harbor no feelings about it, but you know, like I was a senior pastor at a church, and I had some Star Wars stuff up in my office, and apparently that was a very evil thing for me to do as a pastor. And I had a congregant come to me, and like I don't doubt their sincerity in it, but they were like, you know, actually they referenced the candidating sermon, because I had a Star Wars reference because I was trying to show who I was, and like, I like Star Wars. Okay. I love Star Wars, actually. Like, love Star Wars. Wednesday can't come soon enough. Obi-Wan. All right. But I love Star Wars, and I had a few Star Wars things in my office, and I had a congregant come and tell me that it was a sin for me to have those things, and in how when I candidated, this was years before, when I did my candidating sermon, I brought up Star Wars, and that was so offensive to this person that I sinned against him, and that I needed to stop and get rid of the Star Wars things in my office. Now, I actually did, because I loved this person and didn't want to be a stumbling block to them, and didn't see it as something that, like, I knew if I pushed in that scenario, like, again, IFB world, but if I had pushed in that scenario, I knew it would have been a pretty big fight amongst maybe, and bring up other things I didn't want to get into the weeds about. So like, this happens to pastors where you can't like something because you should only love God. Because you should be in the word more, because you shouldn't listen to that music. Are you kidding me? I heard on Black Friday, you peeled out of that parking lot playing Back in Black. I heard it, you know, like that kind of stuff. And it's just, now, are there movies that pastors shouldn't watch? Of course, like any Christian. There are limits. There are different things that we need to be careful about and have discernment when we do these things, and listen to things and all of that. But when we start making arbitrary rules about, well, you're a pastor, so you shouldn't do this thing. And by the way, the why Star Wars is evil wasn't even connected to the Force, which is like, what? I've never heard it before. It was about violence with lightsabers. It's too violent. I'm glad they didn't know some of the other movies I was watching. I like war movies. Yeah. So, in John Wick, but yeah, it's just something that we do to pastors. And like for me, that was very isolating. And I'm not just coming on here to whine about my own experiences. I'm just saying, like for me, it made me go like, all right, well, if he's thinking that, what is that other guy thinking? You know, like how much can I be myself? I don't like, and it's not just even like you don't want to lose your job. It's just like also like you care about them and don't want to like, you know, burden them with, you know, having to have these conversations. Like it's also something like that. If a pastor cares about his sheep and the sheep are always making these kinds of demands, he's probably going to give in to them. And then they're going to feel isolated and lonely. And if you actually come out with actual things that you're struggling with, you know, Star Wars is bad and you're a bad pastor for talking about Star Wars that one time several years ago, then, you know, what happens when I say like, you know, I sinned in this way? Am I going to be able to do that? No, I'm not. I'm not going to feel safe in order to do that. So I'm going to keep that in. And the thing about sin, when you keep it in, it grows. So like, I'm not saying it is the reason or even that it is a major reason for why we see some of the things that we see from, you know, these celebrity pastors or, you know, just pastors in general when they fall and they sin in these very like horrible ways. But I do think that it's a part of the conversation. You know, we got to ask ourselves as a congregation, you know, are we letting them be themselves or are we trying to make some arbitrary, you know, level of holiness that this pastor must fit into in order for us to say he's a good pastor? Yeah, I see that one out of the corner of my eye. They better not read the Bible. It's too violent, right? It's like, go read about some of David's mighty men and what they did. But, you know, whatever. But let's go back over here and let's continue. I'm not going to be able to deal with this the way I wanted it to. We're just going to watch some of these clips and I'll react.
Nor are you or I being a man of God, somebody who is set apart, somebody who is different. It is not money that's the problem. This is a heart issue. And so I would expand this fleeing category to things that money represents: houses, clothing, fashions, jewelry, purses, watches, whatever your thing is that, ooh, I love that stuff. Flee. Get away from it.
Okay, so this idea of fleeing, like, should pastors have expensive stuff? That's a question. I want to know what you guys think. Hop into the chat. Let me know right now. Should pastors have expensive things? What do you think about a pastor who has a really nice car or who has a nice Nixon watch, you know, that his wife gave to him and saved up for it? You know, like, when we see some of these pastors, they shop at thrift stores. A lot of pastors, I know because I was there. You know, if you got to wear a suit every Sunday, that gets real expensive real fast if you're just trying to look decent. Like, not trying to look like extravagant, like just decent. You do a lot of shopping at a thrift store because a lot of pastors aren't paid like John MacArthur, you know, like, or even Todd Friel. Like, no, they're getting paid, you know, almost poverty line. And so, like, I'll just say, like, at one of the churches, I was right at poverty line for what I was making there. And I think a lot of pastors can relate. So if they have a nice thing, it's probably because they saved for it or it was given to them. Now, there are, you know, of course, the celebrity pastors who are all about their stuff and preachers and sneakers and, you know, all that. But to be like, oh, I think this applies, and just in general like that, it continues that stereotype of people judging what their pastor buys and how he spends his money, as if, like, because you supply his money, that you get to have a say over how they spend it. because that's what it means to be a man of God. You shouldn't be materialistic, pastor. Well, maybe they're not, like this idea, like, cause he even references like being able to accumulate wealth, and like the Bible isn't against that. It's about the heart, and that's true. So have a conversation about it with him before you start saying, oh, well, they shouldn't wear that, or they shouldn't, have that collection, whatever that collection might be. They shouldn't be driving that specific car. Have a conversation with them about it. See what they did to get there. Like, I know of a pastor who had to get a second job so that he can pay, like, even though he could pay with the money that the church was giving to him, like that he was getting paid from the church, he had to go and get season tickets for hockey. Yes, Canada. But for the local hockey team, he got season tickets, and he got a second job so that he can say, that's how I pay for my tickets. Why do we do that to these pastors? Like, that's not healthy. But yeah.
This young lady continued to encourage the king in waiting. Hey, if you want your people to love you, then you need to be more relatable, down to earth, just like everybody else. Where did that idea come from? Gotta tell you, I don't think royalty in centuries past.
I need to stop for a second and give you the context a little bit. So he's referencing this Hallmark movie that his wife made him watch. My wife made me watch it. Whatever. I like watching, good romantic movies. I'm the one who usually puts those on in our house. But he's laughing about that and saying, oh, it's, we're so predictable. A king from a far off country basically gets stuck in an inn, and this woman is telling him, you have to be relatable to your, the people you rule over. And so that's what he's going to apply now to this.
Pondered, how do I go about the business of looking exactly like my subjects? That was exactly the opposite point of being royalty. They were to be the high watermark of civilization. If you want to know how high we can go, look at me. I'm royalty. They were to be separate and distinct from the people. It was only in really the 20th century when we started to see a push, a charge for royalty to be relatable. You remember the Queen when Diana died. She found herself holed up in a castle because she didn't think it was appropriate to mourn like everybody else. There were other issues, but the crowds demanded, where's our Queen? She needs to show that her heart is breaking just like ours. She needs to be one of us, relatable. And so it is, just like the world. Again, evangelicals embraced that thinking. We are such pragmatists, aren't we? We're so trendy. We're just like the world. We want our pastors to be like everybody else. Wrong, 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 and wrong. Pastors are to be different. They are to be ahead of the pack. They are to be the ones who do seem to be more godly because they're studying the word more. They're praying more. They're sinning less. They're fleeing from sinful things. And yet the battle cry these days, come on, Pastor, be hip, be groovy. Be just like one of us. Come on. Let's just go play in the mud and do the dunk tank. Put some holes in your skinny jeans. You've got to be relatable.
Okay, Todd Friel is a fundamentalist, okay? Like, anyone who can watch this clip and be like, no, like, you don't know what a fundamentalist is. Like, so much wrong with this clip. First, let me talk about, like, the royalty thing. What a weird comparison, okay? It gets into your mindset, his mindset, and this isn't something that was in the Cripplegate stuff. This is something he came up with. So it's his mindset that a pastor is royalty in the church, like that he's better, and that's what he's getting at and saying, like, no, he's higher than the rest of us. that he's got like this loftier position. That is so disastrous for a local church in so many ways. One, it's not good for that pastor to put him on a pedestal like that. Like, you're going to isolate him, first off, from the community, from like the community of faith within that church. Like, you're not going to be able to have good community. And also, you're going to bloat him with pride. He's going to expect that, yeah, you know what? Maybe I am royal. Like, what? We shouldn't treat our pastors like they're kings in a church. And these fundamentalists, like Todd Friel, and I know he's not IFB, Independent Fundamental Baptist, but he's a fundamentalist. One of the main hallmarks, pun intended, I guess, of a fundamentalist is authoritarian leadership. Like, not, leaders are supposed to lead. That's different. But authoritarian leadership is when it's my way or the highway. And I'm going to abuse my authority and stomp all over you. Because you're in my way. Like, I actually was told this, from someone who I consider to be a mentor. Like, good leadership is, something about like lead, follow, or get out of my way, like that kind of thing. And it's like, that's not what a pastor is supposed to do. Like a loving shepherd, bro. Like that's the picture. Not like beating the sheep to get them to move in a certain direction. But like when you have this kind of view of like a pastor is better, well, then his views are better, right? Like, after all, he's godlier than you. So his views matter more. His opinions on things, it matters more. And next thing you know, he's ruling the church. And it might not even be like, he might not even need to be at a business meeting in order to rule in that way. It's just people know what the pastor wants, so they're going to do what the pastor wants. That's authoritarian leadership. And so this idea of like immediately running to like a metaphor of like a king being like, and also that's not what a king was supposed to do. They just did that because they had a lot of money and wanted to show off. Okay. It wasn't like, I'm setting the standard, like some benevolent thing. Like, I'm setting the standard for my people. This is what we should look like. This is what you should, ascertain. You should seek after this. Like, no. All right. That's not what a pastor is supposed to do. And then when you do that, like, you're just making it almost impossible for your pastor to be their authentic self. To just let like their failures show, and to show like the real way that they talk. Here's something, like, get around like your pastor's buddies. Like, if you have like some kind of like any kind of fellowship, or like maybe even at a conference, if you get to go to a conference with your pastor, listen to how he talks with his friends. And then ask yourself, does he talk that same way to me, to other people in our congregation, or does he sound way different? If that's true, then ask him about it. Are you lonely? Because most likely they're putting on a front to try to, maybe they feel pressure. Maybe it's not even pressure. Maybe that's something that they brought into, this new community. Maybe it was an old church that acted that way. And so they feel like this is just what it is to be a pastor. No, we're all called to be the same sheep. Like, just because a pastor is shepherding the sheep doesn't mean that he's not a sheep. He's a sheep. He's there with them. Like the whole idea of like, oh, there's supposed to be sheepdogs. You don't see sheepdogs in the New Testament, guys. That's not a metaphor that Scripture uses. A shepherd, and that you're a sheep too. So, like, you're supposed to be part of that community. People are supposed to speak into your life, pastor. Like, you should be known. Your failures should be known. It shouldn't be that big a deal when you make a mistake and maybe, like you do something. And we're not talking about like newspaper worthy, but you just sin. It shouldn't be that big a deal for you to apologize, because it wouldn't be that big a deal for that other person to apologize about something they did, right? Like, but no, we don't do that because you can't show any any weaknesses. I was taught, and a lot of pastors, let me know in the chat or in the comments whether you were taught in your Bible college, seminary, maybe internships, maybe even your first ministry as like a youth pastor or something like that. Let me know. Were you taught that you have to be away from your congregation, that you're not supposed to be friends with your congregation? Because that's what I was taught. And let me tell you, that made the first 5 years of ministry very difficult and very lonely. And I had to learn a lot about what does it actually mean to live in community as someone who's leading a congregation or being one of the leaders of a congregation. When you're always trying to look like you never fail because maybe the congregation would react a certain way, or at least you think they would react a certain way. Maybe you were told they would react a certain way. Makes it very difficult to be your honest, transparent self. But that's what the New Testament calls for. People knew who Paul was. Some people didn't like Paul. Think about that. I do want to, hang out with you guys in the chat here. I do need to end this in a couple minutes. But I want to say, Orlando, I always say to live within your means. People will get upset at us pastors for having a cheap new car, never mind an expensive one. I've learned not to pay much attention to those people. That's wise. A lot of younger pastors or maybe new pastors have to learn that. And that tells me that you are seasoned in ministry, that eventually you just got to stop listening to those kinds of people and just be who you are and not have that weigh into every decision that you make. See, I'm not alone. Now, I don't watch a lot of them. I'm just saying. My mom was always watching them, and I'd sit with her and watch some things. Yes, we as the body should be different regardless of whether we are a leader or not. Yes. So let's not make arbitrary rules about the people who are leading us that are not scriptural. Now, should they be above reproach? Yes, but that doesn't mean perfect. And here, that's what I'm seeing. Amen. There's too much pastor worship today. Yeah. Let me see. I do want to hop in. Amen, Dean. Appreciate that. We're creating let's bring this one up. Xander, we're creating a dangerous false dichotomy that says if our pastors are not John MacArthur, they might be well. Oh, what a great pickup, Xander. That is a great call. Yeah. We're creating this dichotomy of you're either faithful John MacArthur or you're unfaithful Carl Lentz, and there's no in between. Great job, man. That's awesome. What a great thought there. Most pastors are not the extreme ends of the pendulum. It just so happens the ones who are the ones we see in the spotlight of social media. How can the congregation keep its leaders accountable if we don't develop relationships with them? Oh, I wish I had that sound effect of bow, bow, bow. That's it, right? Even, beyond their identity and their emotions, but also what if there is stuff? What if there is stuff, but you've built this structure of a community to where that pastor can't be honest about things, or at least he feels like he can't be honest. So maybe he hides things and you can't hold him accountable because you don't know what you should hold him accountable about because he's too scared to say anything because you said he can't watch Star Wars. It's evil. That's the world that we're building for these pastors to exist in. Why are we surprised when some of these guys, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying that is the major thing, but it's part of the conversation that, why are we surprised when some of these pastors next thing we know, they're arrested. We're where did that come from? Well, maybe if we were better communities where we could be healthy and just say who we are and be who we are, maybe you would have been able to see some things that led up to that arrest and could have stopped it back then and be hey, I saw this. That's not okay. And they're oh, thank you. Hold me accountable. Let's move on from this, All right. Got I got like just a couple minutes here. I think got 2 more
Got
clips.
a question for you. Do you let your pastor do that? Do you allow time for your pastor to, having fled from bad things, to pursue good things like study and prayer? Or do you just have him swamped with scheduling? You want to make sure you're getting your money's worth. Come on. We do that, don't we? How much are we paying this pastor? Shouldn't he be at all the meetings? Shouldn't he visit everybody? Shouldn't he be leading every single class that can be taught here? And the answer to that question is no. Not if you want him to be a man of God. And I promise you, you do.
That radio voice. All right. So what he's saying here is that we need to make it to where pastors only have to be in their studies and they just sit in there like a monk and just have a candle next to them and they just read their Bible all day, all night, and they never go home and they're never around their families and they never hang out with us and they never come to business meetings because they're too good for that and they're always just in the study. And sometimes there's like a bird that comes over and like they look at the bird for a second, but right back to the Word of God and just keep on studying. And it's always in the original Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic, but they never do any. It's like that. It's like that's what he's arguing for. It's just like, how far do you go? Like, of course, that's a joke, like of that extent. But how far do you go when you're making up arbitrary rules? Like, everything is arbitrary. So how far do you take it? Like, all right, should pastors have to be involved with every single thing? Like, of course not, because they're people and they have limits. Like, because we all have limits and we could be asked too much of. Volunteers too could be stretched in churches to where like they like my mom for years, literally years. She spent in the nursery, never coming down on a Sunday because the nursery needed to be staffed and she was in charge of the nursery and no one wanted to sign up for the nursery. Like, that wasn't healthy for her. Like, don't do that to your pastor, of course, to where like they just have like tons of stuff and they just have to constantly do things. And they're like, they go to that meeting and that meeting and that meeting, and they still have 4 sermons that they have to do and Sunday school and Wednesday night Bible study. And they need to be active during Awana, like, sure, we need to make room for them, but let's also make sure that they have free time to be able to hang out with us where we could be friends. And like, I could get to know them and he can get to know us, like community. And then also, of course, like family stuff and all of that kind of stuff. Like, they're normal people. Just treat them like normal people. That's my argument. Treat them like normal people. Stop holding them up to these arbitrary standards. And like, I think we would all be better for it. Like, everybody. Like, them emotionally, us emotionally, also accountability wise, we would have a lot of things figured out.
No, but he comported himself in a way that said, this dude, which you wouldn't actually call a man of God because he's so different, this man, he's after something else. Question, pastor, are you? Parishioner, is that what you desire from your pastor? You should, if we want to be biblical.
You shouldn't call a pastor a dude because he's too good for that. How would you? You shouldn't dare speak that kind of language to your senior pastor. He's holy. Don't talk to him like that. Whatever. He's a dude. You're a dude. I'm a dude. Everybody's a dude. We're going full good burger here. Like, when we do that to pastors and we like put them on a pedestal, what else are they supposed to do except for get bloated with arrogance? Like, oh, and like this thing, I've known people who are like people in their own family who might attend their church every once in a while. Like, you still call me pastor when I come over here. Like, what? No. Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate it. Yeah. Hit the like button if you're here. If you're new to the channel, think about subscribing, all that stuff. But yeah, like, I'm Dean. This is something I said on my Twitter a while ago. I kind of like at first, like when I was in Bible college and I was thinking about ministry, I was like, I want to be known as Pastor Dean. That sounds like fun. And then I realized how dumb that was. Like, at least for me. Like, if you want people to call you pastor, that's fine. Like, whatever. But for me, I was like, no, I'm Dean. I'm just Dean. And so when I became a pastor, it's like, no, you don't have to call me Pastor Dean. Just call me Dean. I'm Dean. It's who I am. I'm a person like you. like if I was Dean before the vote happened, after the vote, I'm still Dean. And like, sure, okay, you call him Pastor Dean so people know that he's the pastor, but I just don't like it. And so I never made anyone call me that. And then there's some people who take it even further. Pastor Lentini. Oh, Reverend, before signing his name on a check. You know, like, whatever. We're people. Just be people and be faithful to God. Absolutely. Like, but, you know, all this arbitrary stuff of what holiness means, that what you look like, what you sound like. You can't refer to him as something as primitive as dude. Whatever. I call people dudes all the time. Yeah. So that's my stuff for today. I got to get going here. The kids are getting out of school early. Got to pick them up. Apparently, schools don't let them stay there. You got to go pick up your kids. It's so annoying. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Just be looking out. I got some stuff that I want to do later on this week, especially Bible rhythms. On Friday, I do have some other things. Maybe I'm trying to get more regular. Like, we're having good interaction. Like, you guys are doing all the things, and I really appreciate it, you know? And we're trying to, like, grow this channel, and we got frickin' Joe Thorne watching, and he's coming on the show. Still so frickin' excited about that. So excited. But we're doing stuff here on the channel, and I want to be able to give you guys more videos. And I think probably the best way to do that is through this live stream format, because I enjoy it. I love the interaction that we get to have. And then also, like, again, it saves me on editing. And here's something I will say. I'm a guy. I'm like, let me admit a failure that I have right now. When I am making a video, like, I have notes, but I don't do teleprompter. I don't read my notes. I don't have like a manuscript that I memorize and then shoot a video. I just talk to you. It's like really hard to do it when it's just talking to a camera and knowing like there's no actual feedback. So it's something that I do for myself as well. Like, hey, you know what? It's I'm not sure I would call him a dude, just saying, a bit old school. Sorry if adult son, associate pastor called their pastor dude. We would be having a talk, just saying. Well, hey, like, everyone's a little bit different. So, but it's about like how you're treating him. Like, if you're thinking of him as like some kind of like, I don't know, like divine being. That's just like, he's so much holy. He's so holy, and it's like Moses with his face just shining at you, and you just kind of go like, oh, senior pastor, is that you? You know, like, if you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. He's not Moses, okay? Wayne, I call my pastor Reverend Droke sometimes. Then he looks at me weird, and I say, sorry, Josh. That's funny. Let's see, anybody else hopping in here before we get gone? I said freaking. So if you, I'm me on my channel. Like, I used to watch some of those things, like, but I would say it around my wife and stuff. So if that offends you, sorry, but this is what I'm going to be doing. All right. All right. That's about it. That wraps it up. 43 of you. Whoa. That jumped up from last time I saw you. If you have not hit the button, hit that button. If you're here and you enjoyed this, and maybe you just started watching and you're like, but you're saying you're going to end it. I am going to end it. But here's the beautiful thing about the internet. It's still going to be here. So you can hit the like button now, and then you can go back and start it over. And like I said, if you don't like it after a bit, you can just unclick the button and you're good. Anyways, that's my thoughts. We need to treat pastors like real people, and yes, hold them accountable, and they should fit the qualifications of 1 Timothy 3, but that doesn't mean perfection. We need to make sure that we're being careful about how much we're letting pastors just be themselves. So I appreciate all of you. Thanks, AP. I appreciate you. I'll be back later on in the week. I hope you have a great beginning to your week. And make sure Friday, Bible Rhythms.